So, welcome to Dystropia. Actually, I was thinking about this earlier. I feel like we almost have named the podcast wrong because there's something we say in every podcast, or nearly every. I think we've missed it twice.
Go on.
And it's spoilers, obviously.
Spoilers, obviously? Is that the name of the podcast?
Spoilers, obviously. In that real kind of...
That's quite good.
So,
I like that.
Yeah, it was just, it's something that occurred to me that we always say. And I was like, oh yeah, I didn't think of that, yeah.
I don't know if people want to listen to a podcast called Spoilers, obviously, where it's like, first of all, spoilers is not a good thing. It's actually slightly passive-aggressive.
Well, no, it's actually been shown in studies that people like spoilers.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a thing where people want to know what's going to happen because they're more interested in how it unfolds and how it's revealed.
Mm.
And it's like when someone's doing a puzzle and they're like, "I give us a clue."
Yeah.
Because they just want to know that little bit so they can try and work out the rest themselves.
Yeah. Or if they know they're on the right track, the kind of pleasing thing of kind of then hitting the destination. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So today we're talking about indie experimental stuff.
Yep.
So just
it was going to be
tries to be not necessarily tries to be different, but just does its own thing. Whether it just be three guys decide to make a film, or someone decides, two guys decide to make a game, or you know what I mean, or there's a rookie crew decide to make a TV show, and it just turns out to be quite good.
Mm.
So what have you got for films?
For films? I will immediately say that in terms of experimental movies and kind of weird movies, it's not an indie one, but I watched Darren Aronofsky's Mother! Recently, and I was really, really enjoying it, absolutely loving it. Everyone I know hates the movie. It's a terrible movie, but I had this big smile on my face because I realized if I made a movie, that's the movie I'd make. It's not what I'd set out to make. But if people let me make a movie for long enough, that's the movie I would make. It would absolutely go that direction. I couldn't help myself. I'm like, I could do anything. But I did really like that. I watched it with a big smile on my face going, this is madness.
To me, it was more like, I did watch it. I'm not a fan. I'm not a huge fan. I don't think I'd go back and watch it again, but I didn't mind it. It annoyed me a bit at first. Like, I remember coming out going, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
And then when I thought about it later, I was like, okay, I can kind of see what he was aiming for. But I think what really kind of got to me was that the dialogue felt too disjointed. And I know it's meant to kind of alienate the viewer as well as alienate Jennifer Lawrence's character, but it felt a little kind of. To me, it seemed very clumsy for Darren Aronofsky. I was like, he usually is better at doing dialogue and story, and I was like, this feels like this could have been written that little bit better, that little bit more polished. Where
it's a Trader Toth movie, but it's like but I still would have felt alienated, but I would have been more intrigued because by about 25 minutes into the film, the dialogue had just kind of got me going, I don't give a shit anymore. Yeah, and they don't use any character names for the entire movie, and nobody's credited with the name, and they're trying to alienate you.
That's fine. Like, not having names is fine. You know what I mean? Like, that can work. I mean, actually, if you go back, we were talking about Annihilation recently, and the Annihilation book, nobody has a name. They're all identified by their role.
Ah, right.
So they put in names for the film, but the actual book doesn't have names. They're all just known by their role, what their job is. That's it. So it does work. It can very easily work.
All I'm saying is I'd love to make a movie like that, and then for the premiere, have a little chair at the front facing the audience and just watch them. Just what that feeling that you had of you going, oh, for fuck's sake, this. I'd love to see an entire crowd of people at once go, oh, for fuck's sake, Johnny. Anyway, the movie I want to talk about is a movie called Teeth.
Yes.
2007. It is. It's something that kind of was around the 90s and the noughties and stuff. Was this kind of movie based on an urban myth? Usually a comedy, or usually a horror movie, but this is kind of more of a horror comedy.
Very, very black comedy.
Yes. And the urban myth it's kind of based around, which is one that goes back centuries in various cultures, is the idea of vagina dentata, the idea of a vagina having teeth and incisors and being able to chow down on anything it can grab onto. And it is a terrific movie. It's one of the movies I saw kind of growing up, and then like started showing other people. I started describing it to people. I was like, just come and watch it. It's much it's easier, I guess. And it's really cheap. It was made on like 2 million. I think it made 2.5 million back. So I like it for that, of it just being this punchy thing where they had an idea, they made it really quickly and cheaply, and it barely made anything back, but they got the idea out into the world.
I remember. Yeah, go on.
I'll give a quick kind of synopsis of it. I don't think it's one that many people have seen, and it is about a young girl in high school, and you know, she's got a boyfriend. And the movie is, as much as it is about a vagina with teeth, it's not a monster movie. It is more about, it's in the style of maybe It Follows and stuff like that, where it's about body anxieties, and it's about kind of her anxiety against penetration, and like how lads are generally like seen as the aggressors and stuff like that. And kind of it starts with her getting a promise ring, and kind of it feels like at the start it's a warning against promiscuity, sexy times. Help me out with that word. Promiscuousness. Yes, making the whoopee. It's a warning against premarital whoopee.
As a lot of classic horror is.
Yes. But I think towards the end of the movie it starts like she kind of owns it by the end, if that makes sense, and it's about kind of someone coming into their own sexuality. But the gross out moments of like the bit where her and her boyfriend are fooling around and they're having sex for the first time under a waterfall, and it feels like that should be a sexy place, but if that's your first time and stuff, that's the worst possible place. Everything's horrible. Like, she looks down and there's literal crabs, there's like shellfish crabs moving around in the water, which is off-putting and like so in your face in terms of metaphors. And then they finally have sex, and then he starts screaming, and like she goes to stand up to help him, and the smallest bit of his penis just falls out onto the ground. Oh, it's the weirdest movie. I genuinely recommend anybody go and see it, but it is they managed to keep a joke going and a horror premise going, which is exactly the same thing, for the entire movie, kind of straight-faced, and I'm so impressed by that.
Okay, that's yeah. It's I mean, like, I remember I was working in the cinema when that came out.
I didn't even know it got a cinema release. I dredged it up on the internet.
It got a Halloween cinema.
Did it?
It got a Halloween cinema release, just because of the what you call it. I think it wasn't for the horror-thon, but it was. I was working in the Savoy Cinema in Dublin, and it got a release. And it was, I mean, like, was it a lot of cringing, or was it a lot of laughing, or what? Because I watched it kind of like, again, big smile on my face going, this is weird. No, it was it only ran for like, I think 2 weeks. And it was just like, not a lot of people went into every showing, because people were kind of looking at the poster. So I remember the poster vividly, because it was a red rose that had little kind of like the tips of incisors coming out from between the leaves.
That's quite good.
And I was like, that's the thing. I was actually like, it's pretty good a poster. I kind of like that. So I remember a lot of people coming in, and I think there was some other horror films. There was probably one of those fucking Saw movies or something that was out, or Cell Phone, or one of those other bullshit ones that they just tried to grind every scrap of fucking entertainment out of. But it was it's a weird one. So you'd only get about 10 to 15 people going into every showing, and the film would finish, and I never saw anyone coming out looking horrified. I never saw anyone coming out looking pleased. They all just kind of had this mildly puzzled expression.
That's brilliant.
Or just a blank face. I think there's about 5 or 10 minutes of processing that happens at the end of the film, and it was just like,
but I think
the average cinema goer, like,
I think they don't expect body dysmorphia and body anxieties and sexual anxieties to be laid out in front of them so blatantly as part of entertainment like that. So I can totally see that. It was one I watched that, and there was a movie from 2008 called Dead Girl. And I watched those fairly close together, and I, you know, at the time, kind of feminist movies were fairly slim pickings. So a movie where a girl can bite a dude's dick off with her vagina suddenly seemed like a feminist beacon to me. I was like, oh, super interesting. Like, this is an interesting role reversal.
Kegel exercises, but a form of assault.
The dead girl one is then the exact opposite. It's not about like an empowered woman. It is about two guys who find a naked female zombie. So basically they find a brain dead woman who cannot die, and it is adolescent misogyny taken to the extreme. They keep her as a sex slave. It's a fucking horrific movie, and again kind of played like a comedy in places. And I think that's I know it's horribly misogynistic, but I actually saw it as a little bit of a feminist movie where it's like, is this what you want? Is this the actual extreme of what you'd go to? And you're watching it going, oh god, like, if I think all young lads should have to watch that and go, look at that, look in the mirror there, look at what you would want. Like, oh god, this is disgusting. So those two ones came out in fairly quick succession, and I think they're good they're good feminist discussion movies. But I don't know if I could recommend Dead Girl, but I definitely recommend Teeth.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, I don't know if I can recommend it, but I do find it is an interesting choice, and I just, like I said, I remember it, A, for the poster, and B, for the reaction people had after. Like, I did watch it, and I was kind of like, yeah, okay, because I've watched a lot of fucked up horror over the years. Like, I mean, I think the same year, or it was the year after. No, I think it was the same year. The Horror-thon in the IFI, they showed Cannibal Holocaust, and they had the director there. And myself and my friend Darren Burney's colossal horror film, just film in general, massively intelligent man, and about halfway through he just leans over to me and he goes to say something, and I'm like, burgers afterwards, and he goes, yeah, definitely. And that was it. He was going to say the exact same thing. So man. like that's the thing with a lot of horror. I am, because I've been exposed to so much of it and I've watched so much of it, it doesn't frighten me, it doesn't get to me. I'm more just interested in what they're doing with it. You know what I mean? I find it's for me, horror is the type of lens you put on a story. That makes sense. A lot of the stories are, revenge, but there's been non-horror revenge films. Love stories, and there's been non-horror love stories. There's been coming of age stories, like It is a coming of age story, and there's a non-horror version of that in loads of films. I think so. It's like a lens, and I'm always interested in how warped the lens is, and how they manage to, because it's also a subversion thing. So I'm always interested in how they subvert what they're doing. So
I think, to get very wanky for a second then, I think one of the reasons why I like Teeth like that is because there's a naivety to it, where the guys who made the movie, they didn't quite find the right tone. Like, it could be a much better movie, but it would change the direction to make it a better movie. It would either go straight comedy or straight horror, or or straight allegorical. But because they never really found the voice, I like it for that. I like watching it and going, ooh, I'm really interested to see if you guys pull this off, because you're not quite landing all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's. I think it's why a lot of horror films a lot of horror series, as they progress, particularly ones from the 80s, as they progressed, they tended to move more towards horror. As comedy, because they're warping an existing story or an existing premise, in the first film, and then, as is tradition with sequels, they have to up the ante.
Yeah.
So when you warp it more, it starts to become a pastiche of itself, and it becomes more comical.
Yeah.
Now, the successful ones lean into it, such as Nightmare on Elm Street, where they actually went, let's put the comedy in the role, in the hands of the main antagonist. So they give Freddy Krueger the stupid one-liners. He's pointing out the ridiculousness of what's going on while he's doing it.
Yeah, when you kind of nearly invent a genre and then have to up the ante within the genre, it's very strange.
Yeah.
So the sequel to Teeth, she'd have teeth all down her legs. She'd be able to, like, nut crack people, just clamp onto them, like the girl from Goldeneye. Just glom on.
She do that thing that Black Widow does in Avengers, or in basically all the Marvel films she's in, where she hurricanranas someone.
Yes.
Just straight decapitate someone.
Yeah. Hump.
Yeah. There's there's like they did it to an extent in Friday the 13th, in Halloween, but it's most prevalent, and like it was kind of built in from minute one in Scream, because obviously Scream is a homage and a subversion and a piss take on the horror genre. So, and Wes Craven being Wes Craven, he was able to recognize, yes, there needs to be this comedy here from minute one. You need to have that. It's not just gallows humor. It's because of how fucked up the situation is, and the more you twist it, the more you get that kind of. It's the. At what point does impersonation become parody? Yeah. So it's it's an interesting thing. It's something I've always found kind of interesting with horror. There is one exception to horror films that fuck with me. They're like, every time if I watch any of the Hellraiser films, and I adore the Hellraiser films, and it might be because this might be why I adore them so much, but if I watch them, within 2 to 3 weeks of watching it, I will have a nightmare about Cenobites. It's just guaranteed. And it's
I get those wet dreams as well. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I know, right? Oh, look at you just wake up and it's like
Jesus, wet.
Prince Albert's. But it's just this thing where like it's a price. It's the price of admission that I know ahead of time for watching them, and I think that's why I like. So I don't know if this becomes cyclical now, where because I know I'm going to have the nightmare, I don't just watch one. I'll watch 2 or 3 in one go. But I don't know if that's fueling the nightmare now because I'm watching so much and in one shot, and I'm like.
You get a stronger hit every time.
It's nearly always the same nightmare as well. Like, I couldn't tell you what the details of it are now, but every time I have it...
Yeah, don't tell me a list of your fears. That's not useful.
But there's a point partway through the nightmare where I go, oh God, I'm having this nightmare again.
Really? That's brilliant.
Yeah. It's fucking... It's weird. Like, it's just...
Stuck in the same nightmare is very Hellraiser 5, actually.
Yeah, funnily enough.
What was your choice of movie for the indies and experimentals?
My film is The Perfect Host.
Right, I haven't seen that one.
So, like, if you look it up on Wikipedia or IMDb, it had a budget of like $500,000. And I reckon maybe a quarter of that went on the lead actor, because the lead actor is David Hyde Pierce.
Oh, right.
AKA Niles from Frasier, or Cecil Terwilliger from Simpsons.
Your mother is so corpulous when she sits around she sits
the well-appointed Tuscan Villa. Yes. She sits around the well-appointed Tuscan Villa. It's a film that roughly every 10 minutes it will do something that makes you question everything you've seen in the film up to that point.
Oh, very nice.
It is in no way a horror. It is in no way supernatural. It is essentially a psychological black comedy. Psychological thriller / black comedy. Basically starts off with this character, John, who's fleeing a crime. You don't know what it is. You hear sirens, you see him running, you see him like changing his equipment and all the rest, and he has a leg wound. And it's him, like, it's coming out of LA and he's trying to escape up into the hills, in the Hollywood Hills. And he manages to go into, like, he's trying to escape, he's trying to get away, changes his clothes. At one point near the very start, he goes into a shop and he's just trying to buy like disinfectant for whatever, or like antiseptic for his wound, and the place gets robbed while he's there, and you're like you feel this guy is one of the unluckiest motherfuckers in the world. The TV then comes on in the store, like, you know, like he stops the robbery, but then the TV comes on with his likeness. The guy behind the counter just kind of looks at him and he's like, oh fuck, and he runs out. He goes on foot into the hills and he tries to gain entry into different houses.
Right.
Like sob stories going up, I'm after being mugged and I got stabbed. Can I just wait here for a few minutes? Could we call that? You know, like, call an ambulance. I'm just, you know, I need help. Yeah. That type of thing. Just trying to gain entry so he can try and take over. And he comes across, once or twice he gets stopped. People figure him out and they're like, no, fuck off. And then he comes up to a house. It's David Hyde Pierce's character's house. And he finds like a postcard in the mailbox outside from a specific woman. There's a name on it. And he's like, he goes up and he pretends to be a friend of hers. And he's like, I was in the area. She told me to come look you up and say hello because she's off traveling. And I just want, you know, but on the way I got mugged. And he's like, oh, come on in, Jesus, like, let's look after you. And he's like, oh, thanks very much. And he walks in and he sees like a big dinner table set, and he's like, oh, you were having he's like, I don't want to bother you if you're having a meal, because he's worried about other people showing up. And he's like, oh, no, they won't be here for hours, it's fine, I'm still cooking and all the rest. And he's very much in full Niles Crane mode.
Perfect.
But a little more self-assured, a little less of the kind of dithering idiot and more just of the very posh, refined character.
This is the sliding doors of He'd Never Met Maris. He's the
kind of
hip young bachelor.
Yeah. So he's like, she's talking away to him, and he's like, he helps him, gives him some bandages for the wound and all the rest. And he's like, would you like a glass of wine? Like, I mean, we can help you out. And he's like, yeah, sure. And he drinks the wine. Your man, the criminal, is drinking the wine, and then he realizes the wine is drugged, and he blacks out.
Right.
And then he wakes up, and he's tied to a chair, and the party is in full swing. And we're going to go slightly into spoiler territory here.
Right.
But every guest that David Hyde Pierce's character is interacting with is a figment of his imagination. That all happens in the first 15 minutes of the film.
Amazing.
I'm not going to tell you anything else about it, right? But it will consistently fuck with you.
Oh man, that sounds great. I will definitely look that one up.
Yeah, it was one.
It sounds a little 1 hour photo, a little identity, a little like there's a bunch of stuff in it where you're kind of you're twisting your head, looking at it, kind of going, I think I know it. Nope, I don't know.
Yeah, it's not the like it. And like I said, it's a dark comedy. There's a lot of jokes running through it.
Right.
And it's basically Niles Crane, a little more self-assured, a little bit of a psychopath, full on like just reveling in the character. And you can tell that David Hyde Pierce was waiting for years to do a Frasier episode like this, and then they were like, let's just, this film came along, and he's like, I'm on board. I'm 100% on board.
That sounds really good.
I would definitely recommend it. Like I said, I'm not going to spoil any more. Like I've given some spoilers, but it's literally all happens in the first 10-15 minutes of the film. And the film is an hour and a half long. So
there was a movie like that I saw that was it sounds very similar, which is a guy who goes to a house and then he's injured or something, and the dude who owns the house is completely insane, like clearly insane. I think maybe he's there. He goes up because of Craigslist or something. He's going up to get something, and the guy just keeps trying to hang on to him, and it gets so fucking weird. Like with the lengths this guy will go to just keep the dude in the house and keep them hanging out. I'll have to find that one again, and I'll talk about
Tusk,
it.
Is it?
No, it's not Tusk. That's another one where a guy wakes up tied to a chair. That's a strange theme that we can pick out.
Okay, we could have done a whole episode on that, but yeah.
But it's one like him taking fake phone calls saying that his wife is sick or something's gone wrong, and he asks the guy to stay for a minute and like make sure everything turns out all right, and just keeps doing things. I think my one's a found footage movie nearly, but it's very interesting.
Okay.
I'll look it up.
Okay.
I was gonna also talking about kind of experimental ones. I was going to talk about Primer, but I'll save that for the future episode we do about time travel. So I'm now talking about Primer, which is a callback to an episode we haven't quite done yet.
Which is perfect.
Yeah, which works.
Yeah, I mean, like this is the thing. I think that particular that one actually, The Perfect Host, is based on a book as well. But it's just. Yeah, like I said, it's more indie than experimental, but because it constantly messes with you. Yeah. It just has that kind of feel of like, I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
But in a really kind of like
90 minutes.
The story doesn't feel disjointed because of it. I should say that. The story is actually really well put together, and you don't feel like you're you don't feel like it's like why did he just do that? That doesn't make sense. When you you might get that occasionally during the watching of the film. When you reach the end of the film, if you realize what's happening, then you're like, because it's never explicitly told what the different what David Hyde Pierce's character is up to, but it's hinted at throughout, and then when it happens, you're kind of like, oh, okay.
I think 90 minutes to 2 hours is exactly the perfect. Like, this is something you can do really well with movies, is keep chopping and changing with the idea that there's a definite end point. It's not like a TV series, or it's not like a video game where it kind of has to keep going past a point. So I really like. Obviously, I love the game, and I love things like that where you can keep switching stuff up, and then the idea is, and then do a big reveal, and then people walk out with a big smile on their face, and you kind of think, if I went back and watched it and thought about it a bit more, maybe it wouldn't make sense, or like Memento or something. But it pulled me through, kept me for 90 minutes, boom, ending, and like happy. I'm so glad you had that experience.
I'll be honest, can't stand Memento.
Yeah, it was a really weird one that I watched it back on DVD back in the day, and then as I was going through, I always when I had DVDs, I used to always see what the special features were, and I accidentally hit the secret button that plays the movie forward in chronological order, so it plays it correctly. And then I sat and watched it again because I didn't know what I'd done to find that special feature, and I was afraid I'd never find it again. So the reason I hate Memento is I watched it twice, once backwards and then once forwards, and like forwards, it's such a boring movie.
Yeah. But like for me, it was like I was watching it, and I'm just kind of like I think partially it had been too hyped for me because everyone was raving about it, and I'm like, all right, well, I'll watch it. And I sit down and I watch it, and I'm just kind of like, is that it? Because I've seen this done in, I don't know, I think it was done in one of the books. Actually, like there's a it seems to be very heavily influenced by an Ian M. Banks book, to a degree. I don't know if you've ever read much of his stuff. The culture stuff and things like that.
No, it's someone I'll go back to because he's very hyped for me. So I'm going to wait till I forget all about him and then grab one of his books.
Yeah, there's one of his books called Use of Weapons. It ends in the middle, right? In that it alternates through chapters. So a group some of the chapters are going backwards through time. It's basically the memories of a character, and then the other ones are moving forwards through time. And then the whole idea is that chapter 1 is the last chapter in the storyline series, and then chapter 2 is the first chapter in the storyline series, and they basically alternate all the way back to the midpoint, which is actually where the reveal is.
Right. Interesting.
And they're even numbered differently. So all the ones as they're going backwards are done in Roman numerals, and all the ones as they're going forwards are written 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's all centered around one character and his life and his interaction with his siblings and stuff like that. And it's that ending for me was kind of like, that is probably the book that has, and like, this doesn't spoil anything. The reveal on that book is probably the best reveal I've ever read.
I'll have to look that one up.
And it's just, I think part of it was because of the structure of the book. Because I read it and I kind of go, oh, holy shit, this happened in the middle. And it was again experimental. Yeah, it is. I can't really think of another book that kind of does that.
What was the name of the book?
I've heard of that does that.
What was the name
Use
of it?
of Weapons.
Use of Weapons. I'll look that one up.
Yeah, by Ian M. Banks. It's part of his culture series. The thing about the culture series is you can read it kind of in any order. One that I would recommend if you want to, like, so people always go on about the Wasp Factory and the Crow Road, because Ian Banks used to write sci-fi and he couldn't get a publisher. So someone said, what if you just write a fiction book and try and get that published, because sci-fi, there's a smaller market for it, people are less likely to pick it up, it gets less recognition and less attention at the time. Obviously, like in the decades since, and with the likes of just even the big franchises, Star Wars, Game of Thrones, all that thing, and The Expanse, more attention is paid to outstanding examples of fiction, regardless of what genre they're in. So, but he went off and he wrote a book called The Wasp Factory.
I know that,
and it's an incredible book, and I would never recommend it as the first book by Ian M. Banks anyone reads.
Fair enough. I think it's the only one of his I own. I've never read it. Yeah,
it's just, it can be a hard book to read. I think you'd be fine with it, but it could just be a hard book to read. What I would recommend is he has other ones like the Crow Road is quite well done, and that's one of his just general fiction books, and it's really good. So if the name is Ian Banks, it's just fiction. If it's Ian M. Banks, it's sci-fi. And of his sci-fi books, I think there's 16 or 15, and the majority of them focus around this culture called the culture.
Right.
And they can be set hundreds of years apart in the culture, but the whole idea is that it's just the principles of the culture set up in one book transfer onto the next ones. How their technology works, how their culture is, their civilization is structured, that type of thing. So I would recommend. There's a book called The Player of Games.
Yes,
that's kind of his best one.
Right. I'll.
But anyway, there's a bit of a tangent. But
yeah, I might grab Use of Weapons. I really liked House of Leaves. By what's the guy's name? Michael C. Leonovsky or something like that. He's got a weird name where I assume his last name is made up to protect his identity or something like that. But the House of Leaves one is very good like that, which is about like people in a non-Euclidean house exploring it, and then the book becomes non-Euclidean as you're reading it, where the footnotes start taking over the story and pages start turning, and there's like there's squares cut out kind of, where there's a square bit in one page that's a reference to another page, as if you were looking through the page you're currently looking at and seeing a future page. It's very well done, and it is very difficult to read.
Okay. Does it? You were talking about footnotes taking over. Speaking of another great writer from English language writer from Europe, would be Terry Pratchett. Both him and Ian M. Banks have recently passed away in the last few years. But Pratchett's stuff, people are always going like, oh, can you read Pratchett in any order? It doesn't matter. And most people go, nah, it doesn't really matter. But it kind of does. He always puts in footnote references, and they're numbered throughout the book. So you're reading the book, and it'll go like, on page 3, it'll say something, and then it'll have a little number 1, and then at the bottom there's a footnote that explains the joke. But the explanation of the joke is always funnier than the joke itself.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. But then later books, the same joke will be used, and he won't explain it. For example, in one of the books, there's the 1,000,000 to 1 chance, where they explain that 1,000,000 to 1 chance will work 9 times out of 10, because the universal law of cinematic entertainment. Right?
Yes.
It's just like, it looks better, it's more impressive. And that's happened in one book. Later on, someone's like, I don't know, what you reckon the odds of this are? And they're like, about 900,001. He's like, all right, what if I bounce the shot through that window and off that chimney? Yeah, it looks like it's about 1,000,000 to 1 then. But they don't make the callback, and as far as I can remember, it's a separate book. It's not even later on in the same book. It's a separate book. So, and again, there's characters introduced that are there long term, and like principles and stuff. So that's kind of similar to Ian M. Banks' thing with the culture. You can read them out of order, but you're not going to get the full value unless you read them in order.
Yeah.
So
it's a good shout out.
Yeah. In terms of games, I'll just quickly do mine.
Yeah, go on.
Something else soon?
No, go on.
Because you were speaking about non-Euclidean geometry, a non-Euclidean book, so which kind of ties in quite well with my game, which is Antichamber. Right. So Antichamber is a first-person puzzle platform game from 2013. It came out start 2013. It was around January. It was near my birthday. I remember it being near my birthday. So part of it is a guy was trying to make a game, a first-person shooter game, based on kind of like the Snake principle, but taking it into a 3D environment where, as you progress, your progress through the game has made your future progress harder.
Right. As in your tail gets longer in Snake, so you're filling up more of the
exactly. And you have to be more careful where you move, and how you make sure you don't fuck up your own thing. But he wanted to turn it into a multiplayer experience. So when he was coding in the Unreal 3 engine, and he made a mistake, which allowed him to a rookie mistake as he called it, which allowed him to make accidentally non-Euclidean geometry.
Right.
So for people who don't know what we mean when we say that, Euclidean geometry is the whole thing of like a cube has 6 sides, each side is in 3D space. Yeah, exists in 3D space. With Antichamber, you can be looking you come into a room, there's a cube in the center, and the side you're looking in at, you can see a corridor, but you step around to the left or the right, you don't see the corridor come out the back of the cube. In fact, if you look at the other sides of the cube, you will see other rooms that all appear to exist inside this cube, but don't. Walking through certain corridors, you will end up in walking through the same corridor 3 times, you will end up in different locations depending on whether you're facing forwards, backwards, or sideways. The game is specifically built to fuck with all the habits that you were taught from playing computer games.
Right. So does that mean
Things don't make sense on purpose.
if I strafe through a doorway, I'll end up somewhere different than if I just walk straight through it?
Correct.
Oh, weird.
Not every door.
Yep.
And there's hints in the game that tell you this. That like you have to decipher the hints as you're traveling through. There's no real plot to spoil here, by the way. This is literally like the game is designed to fuck with everything you know about games. So if you've ever played a computer game where you had to go down here and I turn right, no, I see that thing that I want to reach. Well, it's behind a set of bars, so I got to find a way to get around behind this room and come at it from another direction.
Right.
And I'll be on the opposite side of the bars. But if you go around and you come through, you're actually above it looking down. Like
that's very good. I like that.
It just and it's a testament to how well designed it is, in that when you're playing it, you'll stop every so often and go, okay, I got to figure this puzzle out. But I've never seen anyone play it and get frustrated with it. You will get stuck regularly because it's a puzzle game, and that's kind of the part of it. It's like you have to get these little stops, these little pinches every so often. So when you beat them, you go, "Oh, fucking nice one, I got it." You get that little endorphin rush. But they're done in such a way that I've never seen anyone just get stuck and be like, "I couldn't figure it out." Yeah. Everyone finishes it, and you can finish it in under, I think, 90 minutes because there's a timer element in the game.
Oh, right.
And the whole idea is that so when you start off, you're in a cube. And one of the walls is the menu. Right. It's a diegetic menu. It's in the game.
Nice.
You can move and you can see like stuff moving with parallax in the background. Another one is the map. One
of the walls in the cube is the map. Right.
Yes. And you can go back and visit it. And it will show you stuff based on what you've traveled to. Because the map fills in as you play the game. Right. Then you have a timer that you can start, and from the map you can click on sections of the map and visit any room you've been to. There's a 90-minute timer on one of the other walls, and then another one of the walls has a lot of kind of iconography that's kind of meant to give you hints, but it's kind of meant to tease you.
Right.
That's just kind of how it's set up, but it's incredibly well done, super simple looking. A lot of it's in black and white. So it's just white. It almost looks like a pencil drawing. It's white, little black outlines. But then you'll go into a room and it instantly will highlight what is wrong, but that'll be in full color. And you just got to figure out what's going on.
I like it. It sounds very stylish.
Yeah, it's just and like I said, it's a nice one of those kind of quick games. I feel in a way it didn't get a lot of attention because a lot of people when they first saw it, they were kind of like, it's just trying to be Portal. But it's a completely different style of game. So it's got the first person puzzle thing, but how they do their puzzles is so different. Yeah. So I mean, it's got huge ratings. It's done really well critically. And I think it sold maybe like 120,000 copies. It's done well for something that was essentially done by 2 or 3 guys. I think it might have been even one guy. But it's also one that not a lot of people have heard of. People who are like big into games are like never heard of this thing. So yeah. What's your game?
Well, just before we move on to the Unreal Engine, I remember using that in college, and it was super fun to play with because you could get to grips with it and test stuff really quickly. Like you'd start off in an environment, hit play, and then you were running around the level, and then you go back and start making changes. So it was a very kind of learn by doing kind of thing. Yeah. And you could, we used to make these big levels that had timers and clocks and stuff in it. And the way we do the timers and clocks is all movement and collision. So if you zoomed out of the level, off to one side, we had this big clockwork set of bullshit going on where there were blocks moving. And when they touched each other, it would trigger something in the level. So we had all these things set up. And it genuinely did look like a clockwork thing happening elsewhere. And it was really fun to watch. But we were trying to make a game about a ghost and the idea that you could pass through walls and try to help a detective solve a crime by getting in ahead of him and doing certain things in the room. Okay. But we had this really weird problem where when you passed through a wall and went back, it would reset all the triggers and reset all the timers and everything because it to save on processor speed, it would stop rendering that room and then render everything when you came back in. So we had to solve. Okay. So we had to solve this, me and like the 2 other people we were working with. So I was tasked to solve this idea that you could pass through walls, and I made a little game which was Minesweeper. So it was a little deathmatch game, and there was like a 16 by 16 grid of rooms, and you could pass through the wall, and as you pass through, you just pop into the next room. But I put bombs in certain rooms and a big red floor with the Minesweeper bomb on it, and on every other room, I put a number on the ground to tell you how many bombs were in adjacent rooms. And when you looked up, there was no ceiling. And then way, way above you was the Minesweeper board. So if you wanted, you could look up and look at the map and see what rooms you were next to, but you kind of had to work out in mirror where you were. And right. me and Leelis and a few other people used to just play this level constantly, because while someone's hunting you, like if they see you jump through a wall, they'll jump through after you because they assume it's safe. And because there's no ceiling, if someone blows up, you see their blood and guts fly over the walls and like explode and disappear. We played that game for so long. And like our lecturer was up going, "Is this your project?" And we were like, "No." He's like, "This should be your project. You've done a project. This is fine. Just submit this, you fucking idiots."
Yeah. Well,
I'd love to dig that up again. It was the most fun. Just this manic fucking game of Minesweeper where you were chasing someone basically through a maze, and like at one point you'd run into a room and look down and it would just say 6 or it would say 5 on the floor. And you're like, the only safe thing to do is back out, but I think there's someone chasing me. It was good fun.
Nice. I approve.
My video games one, I'm going to talk about the guys who were in Indie Game the Movie, which is something on Netflix. I know that if we're talking about games, it can be very obtuse sometimes, and it's something that people can't immediately go out and find and play. But the Indie Game the Movie is on Netflix, and you have a look at it, and it follows the guys who made Super Meat Boy, the guys who made the guy who made Fez, and then it has Jonathan Blow, who made Braid, kind of talking in retrospect about the success. And I really love the guys who made Super Meat Boy, Team Meat. The artist guy Edmund McMillan in particular. He made Gish way back in the day, which is kind of the first. It was on that first crop of really good games on Steam. That really kind of kicked that one off. He's done a lot of. He does a lot of concept games. He does a lot of very quick games that have one thing that he's just trying out or have an art style he's just trying out. He did Super Meat Boy, obviously, which is a shout out to kind of the hardcore Mario style platformers, but even more ridiculous. So it's Super Meat Boy for Super Mario Brothers. And then more recently,
but he did Binding of Isaac.
Binding of Isaac, that's it, absolutely. Which is a hugely stylized game. It's like he does some stuff that's quite simple. Like that's Binding of Isaac is just a classic roguelike, but by putting a couple of little innovations and making it very stylish, making it quick, and just tightening it up to make it the tightest experience possible is something the guys are very good at.
I don't know if you'd even say it's a typical roguelike. I think it's kind of the game that catapulted roguelikes into... and put it in front of a lot of gamers, because a lot of gamers would never have encountered anything that they could identify as a roguelike. I mean, that game came out now 7 years ago.
It's still...
It came out the same month as Skyrim.
And
I remember that much.
I went into a game shop this week, and they have a new edition of the Binding of Isaac, like some new collector's edition of it that's like for the PS4. Ridiculous.
Yeah, the thing sold over like 7 or 8 million copies. It sold. Like it's huge.
It's ridiculously huge, and people absolutely love it. Like it's the game I have the most fun playing that I know I'm not good at. Like I fucking suck at the Binding of Isaac. I've never completed it, and it's so much fun.
What?
I
absolutely never completed it.
That FTL and Hotline Miami, I fucking suck at. There's something, I don't know what it is. There's something about roguelikes. I think as it branches and there's more and more opportunities, my mind just starts wandering. Like, what could have been?
I would recommend, in terms of roguelikes, I would recommend the Rogue Legacy.
Yes, you were saying that one to me. You've described that one to me in the past. I'll absolutely give that one a shot and then do a shout out on a future
It's a little more constrained than the other ones.
Also, while kind of looking up where everyone from Indie Game the Movie is, because it's about these people all trying to release their games, and it's about the Super Meat Boy guys literally getting it on Xbox Live, and like the stress and the tension and everything that comes with it. It's about Phil Fish, who I've discovered, it's because he's from French Canada, his real name is Philippe Poisson, which is really fun for me. And it is about the 5-year development cycle for Fez and how he went absolutely insane while it was being made and like quit the games industry. and like is now kind of working a little bit of VR and is getting back in and doing like kind of really meditative games that seem to be good for his blood level, his blood pressure. So I'm very happy to see him doing stuff. And of course, Jonathan Blow went on to do The Witness, which is basically Sudoku, the video game. You just sit, and there's it annoys me that there's no music. He could have easily just...
Yeah, that feels like a game where he could have even like bought stock music.
Yeah.
That was, you know, like you license stock music for a couple of $100, and it's like, you know, there's plenty of non-intrusive ambient things. Not everything has to be scored by Jesper Kidd or Jeremy Soule. Like you can do the little kind of quiet ones and just...
Honestly, like really discordant wind chimes in the distance, like proper music for airports, whatever the Brian Eno one was it's music you're not supposed to listen to. Something like that in the background. There's 100 million artists out there making this chill out music that you could have just licensed it. It would have been absolutely fine. But I think of all that stuff, Edmund McMillan, the guy who worked on Gish, Super Meat Boy, Binding of Isaac, I always follow him. I always like his stuff. And I've gone back and played quite a few of his little Flash games that were all up on Newgrounds, and they're still up there. And he's got a game called The C Word, which he does talk about in some interview, and the game's just called Cunt. And it is... you are a dick shooting poop out of vagina. I wonder if there's a theme in this episode for me. Anyway, and it is obviously made to be offensive. It's obviously made to be terrible and vulgar and ridiculous. And there's this weird, if you watch videos of people playing it, there's this weird beauty that just starts coming out where it's a bullet hell game, and you are a circling dick that keeps changing as you upgrade, and there is a angry vagina in front of you that keeps changing as well as it goes through its different boss states. And like after a while you're just looking around and the entire screen is just a smear, like everything's black and white, and then by the end of the game everything's a smear of horrible colours. And like you're just looking at it going, actually, do you know what? You made something weirdly pretty out of all this horribleness. So, yeah, this might be one that we can't, if we put the video together, I don't think we can put a... I'll put a pixelated square next to us, and you'll have to trust me that it's a pretty game eventually. Not pretty, but it's like a Rorschach test. You're staring at it and seeing stuff going weird. Yeah, it's not graphic, it's comic book style nearly, but it's very strange.
Okay. That's
I do like high concept vagina stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Okay. Moving on, please.
Yes.
So, what's your TV one? What's your
TV we kind of said this previously, that it's hard to kind of find indie TV shows because by their very nature they have to be approved by someone and put on air. But there was a period of time in the 90s where there was a lot of British shows going on air, and it doesn't feel like anyone ever checked or tested them or anything. They're very experimental. One example would be Jam by Chris Morris, the guy who would eventually go on to do Brass Eye and that kind of stuff. And it was a horror comedy show that is so heavy on the surrealist horror that like I don't understand how this got made. And there's like one of the big things that stuck with me is like this really existential dread. And one of the scenes was a guy who wanted to commit suicide by jumping off a 40-story building, but he was afraid of heights, so he jumped off a 1-story building 40 times. And it's him jumping headfirst off this building and hitting the ground, and like nearly a news commentator telling the story. And like once people figured out what he was doing, they kind of like started watching him, and by about 30 he couldn't make it up the stairs anymore, so the crowd started helping him because they were kind of behind him at that stage and they were cheering him on. So they started bringing him up and throwing him off to get to 40. Oh man, it's the darkest thing. Look up a couple of clips of that, and then to move off that horror, just to have something. We always do horror, so to have something cheery, my actual choice is This Morning with Richard Not Judy, which is a Stewart Lee and Richard Herring comedy TV show that was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. There's no way somebody saw this and approved it. They must have just saw the two comedians' names and been like, yeah, this is fine. It was a lunchtime show on a Sunday, from 1998 to 1999.
Didn't they have something else beforehand though? There was something.
There was Fist of Fun, which was their late night show, and that made sense. And that was like.
So it might have been off the back of that they were just like, oh, Lee and Harry want to do something daytime, and they're going to tone down the comedy, but they're going to tone it down so it's family friendly, or you know what I mean? Like it'll get past the censors, and they're like, okay, let them do it.
They never curse or anything, but like the stuff they say is so objectionable. And like they even make a joke of it in the second series where they're saying, "Welcome back to the show that one viewer has written in to call poorly scheduled." And it's two alternative British comedians doing all these very strange bits. One of them was called Richard's Food and Milk segment, where he would just review milks from different mammals, and he would talk at length about how. Where he did like the BFE or BSCFE, or whatever it is, the mad cow disease. I don't know why I can't do words today.
BSE, the
mad cow disease,
scary or CJD in humans, but yeah.
Is it? He was saying how people would like want to drink other milks, and he's like goat milk. Oh, not a goat, not a dirty animal like a goat. You don't know where their teats have been. They're dragged through the detritus. He's like, oh, like sheep's milk. No, Stewart, I don't want wool in my milk. And it's that kind of weird thing where it's nearly intellectual comedy and nearly puerile comedy, and it just bats between the two. And he's talking about milking a cat into a little dish. You see his little face. It's almost as if he understands. It's like, understands what? That a 30-year-old man wants to drink his milk. It's like, that's why I said almost. He doesn't understand, obviously. They did an episode where Richard went on a hunger strike to save lab rats. And they had like every episode they would kind of make fun of this idea that it was a lunchtime TV show. So they would often have things like a call-in segment. It's like, call in, ask the bill payer because it's £1 a minute. Call in. Do you think that call-ins on lunchtime TV shows are just a blatant cash grab to get your money? Dial 1 for yes. Dial 1 for no. Dial 1 for I don't know. That's £1 a minute. But the one where he had he was trying to save lab rats. He had a big totalizer, one of those big thermometers where it fills up to show how much money they've raised and things like that.
Oh yeah.
And he was on hunger strike. And at one point, like Stewart catches him eating a sandwich, and he's like, "I thought you were on hunger strike." He's like, "I'm on a hunger strike between meals, obviously. Like I'm gonna take a break." And then you slowly realize over the episode they've been filling up this thermometer with mice. They've just been pouring in all the mice that they've been saving. And by the end of the episode, only the ones on top are still alive. The ones all the way down have died because of like asphyxiation over the course of the episode. And that's the joke. That's the whole joke. I knew there's no release for this. There's no DVD or anything like that. And it was all lost. There's a few episodes on YouTube. But I've just been on Stewart Lee's website and found that he's found all the episodes and put them up, all the YouTube videos. So they're on Stewart Lee's website. You can watch them. And Brilliant. Jesus Christ, I'm sure it has... if you just watch them start to finish, by about the third episode, the gags start doing these weird callbacks and the repetition gets so much that you start getting kind of giddy and getting involved.
Is this like that thing with the Clerks Animated where their flashback episode was the second one?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the first episode they do is it's not quite straight, but it feels like they're, like, you kind of feel like you know the format, and they do a bit where it's like, pause for prayer, and it cuts to Kevin Eldon, the actor Kevin Eldon, in a full priest outfit, where he just does a weird thought. He goes, will an ape who follows the word of Christ be allowed into heaven? Yes. But would an ant who follows Christ's teachings be allowed to join us in eternal paradise? No. Such is the plan of God. And then it cuts back and the show continues. You're like, that was weird, but that's the kind of bullshit that like priests do at a thought. By the end of the series, that priest is saying the weirdest fucking shit straight to camera, and it's so terrifying. I love
Kevin Eldon. He needs to do more stuff.
He does. His Funny or Tie video with the gun is amazing. But as a young atheist, as a young person who had no religious upbringing and thought religion was a bit silly, watching them do straight kind of religious piss takes and they had a segment called Sunday Heroes where they did all the Jesus garb and would do Jesus jokes and do like kind of isn't religion silly jokes, and it's the kind of stuff that like what do you call them, Mitchell and Webb started doing, and like it's like a standard thing now. But that was the first time I'd seen people doing jokes about how religion was fucking ridiculous. At basically when everyone else was in church, I was sitting at home watching that, thinking this is the best thing I've ever seen. But that was it. I'm still in love with the show.
Go on.
Go on.
No, I was just saying, I don't think I'd ever caught that specific show, but I remember watching a lot of Lee and Herring stuff back then. But I think, it was more Fist of Fun and stuff like that.
They carried over a lot of the sketches.
Yeah, it just like, that was kind of, it was weird because I remember watching it and being like, yeah, this is fucking mental. And then just over time, I kind of forgot about them in a weird way. Like, I remember the show, but I almost couldn't place the faces in a weird way. And then it wasn't until many years later when one of my friends just had like a Stewart Lee DVD or something I put on. I was like, Christ, I haven't seen this guy in years. And it's just like a sense of humor. I love it. I know it's not for everyone. It's very much not for everyone.
On his official website, he has a Twitter feed, and it's just people saying negative tweets about him, like everyone who fucking hates him. And he's like, yeah, he is divisive, all right.
Yeah, and it's like I like when he does a piece, particularly on the Comedy Vehicle, the TV series, when he does a piece where he spends 5 to 10 minutes just repeating the same paragraph, sentence of a joke, but it's his physical and emotional reaction to it and to the statement. I love that type of stuff. I think it's just it's some of the best comedy doesn't involve speaking, obviously, but it's the whole thing of like, I don't know, it's almost, it's like there was a similar joke or a similar style of joke that was in Earthworm Jim that I always thought was fantastic. I think it's in the very last episode of Earthworm Jim season 2, where Princess What's Her Face, which is her actual name, I'm not forgetting it there for anyone who's not familiar with the show. Princess What's Her Face, Jim, and Peter Puppy are sitting in a diner, and evil Jim comes busting in, and Jim jumps up, and in his constant thing of he always thinks he's on a date with Princess What's Her Face when he's not. And he's like, how dare you interrupt our date? And he's like, evil Jim is like, oh, shut up. You two lovebirds will have plenty of time. Because she's like, this isn't a date. And he goes, well, what? Of course it is, my dear. And he's like, shut up. You two lovebirds will have plenty of time for bickering in the afterlife. And Peter's like, afterlife? And the princess is like, lovebirds? And Jim's like, plenty? And he just kind of stops and looks at him, and he's like, plenty. It's one of those words you say it a couple of times, it stops making sense. Plenty, 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 plenty. See, I sound like an pneumatic road drill. And then the episode just resumes. And I'm just like repetition is normally shit in comedy, but there is ways of making it fantastic. And I just obviously his stuff is that more kind of drawn out, but it's the reaction, it's not what he's actually saying, it's how he's saying it, and it's So I love his style of comedy. I think it was the first season of Comedy Vehicle. It's like the second or third episode, and essentially the last 10 minutes is him having a scripted mental breakdown, and none of the audience know whether it's scripted or not.
Yep.
And they're all kind of nervous, like they're laughing at first, and then like you can hear the nerves creeping into the laughter as the episode progresses, and I'm like, this man's genius.
He's starting like he's not on stage anymore. He's doing ridiculous shit.
He climbs up into the audience. He's hanging off the railings of the upstairs, shouting at people.
It's so good.
But yeah, he's very good. My TV show's kind of, in a weird way, I suppose, is I don't think people nowadays will think of it as indie, but it was indie at the time. 100%, and it was definitely experimental. Was a bit of Fry and Laurie.
Yes, that was
the time when they came along. The vast majority of comedy was very much, it was either the specials you'd get, Cannonball or the Two Ronnies and stuff like that. Like it was very much just like or stuff with Bob Monkhouse, or you know what I mean. It was very 6 o'clock Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, everybody had their characters.
Friendly.
Everybody had their characters and they stuck to them.
And their catchphrases and all the rest. Yeah. Or if they had the other comedians they used to get was the likes of the ones that have basically not aged well. The ones who are very kind of working class. Well, that's what they build themselves
Bernard
as.
Manning kind of lads. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so Fry and Laurie come along, and obviously Stephen Fry, Hugh Laurie, two of the biggest names in entertainment now, but not necessarily that well known back then. I think they'd been in. I think Jeeves and Wooster came.
Jeeves
after.
and Wooster. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was after.
I was after. But if you actually go back and watch and listen to some of the jokes in a bit of Fry and Laurie, I think the only way they got them on TV was because they sound posh.
Do you know what?
Because
I was always
their stuff is like very risky for the time.
Yep. They were the
Like,
weirdest dudes where they would be themselves and they would be posh sounding dudes.
Yeah.
But their characters would change. And did they come up through the footlights in
Yes.
Yeah, they were same as some of the Monty
Cambridge?
Python crowd. Yeah, Cambridge.
Yeah. And obviously, like, they were kind of the first surrealist comedy group or comedy act on TV since Monty Python.
Yeah. They would have bits where like people would be walking behind the sets and stuff like that, and the camera would be tracking them, and they would be doing bits, and you're like getting to see behind the scenes like that is weird. But they would be themselves, but play wildly different characters sometimes. Like they'd still be themselves, but one would be angry at the other one, and one would be a horrible person, and the next one would be lovely, and the next one would be musical, and the next one would be like. It was that very much sketch comedy, improv, keep it moving kind of feeling.
And it's in a weird way, you can actually see nearly every character that the pair of them played in every TV show they showed up in. Like the whole Lord Melchett thing that Stephen Fry used to do. The loud, angry,
that kind
what
of
the bloody hell are you doing? And like smacking like Hugh Laurie around. And it's like that was very much just like that was part of their persona where like the McCall, as they call each other, McCall, and they'd be there, and like Hugh Laurie's playing the piano, and it's just kind of
he'd be shaking a
looking
drink
off into
while
the distance, like and then like Stephen Fry comes up to make a drink, and it all goes horribly wrong, or he just goes off on one at someone in the audience, but it's all scripted. But he's like the person in the audience is in on it, but he goes off on one, and he's like roaring at someone in the audience, and you can see the people around that guy not realizing there's a plant going, what the fuck is going on? And there was just like some of the references, some of the sexual references and stuff like that they made, and there was the famous one where they're playing detectives, and they come around, and there's a bit where like he's turning around and he's roaring at the baby, and I found out later that was Hugh Laurie's kid,
really,
like, just roaring at the child. But like it was very kind of out there for the humor at the time. There wasn't really a lot of things like it on TV, and because I think Monty Python, it partially was nobody wanted to try it because nobody wanted to, like, it's this whole thing of like Jared Leto is a shit joker, but I respect him for at least trying it after Heath Ledger.
Yes, absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's a big act to follow, and Monty Python is like the biggest act to follow. It's still considered the greatest comedy troupe of all time. Yeah. It's still considered some of the funniest films and TV series of all time, and it's like they were the first to kind of step up to it, and they did their own thing so well. And like I said, because it was so posh, I think they just got away with it. Because people were like, well, no, obviously it's not crass because it's these two posh guys who went to Cambridge or Oxford or whichever one they went to. I can't remember. So it's a weird choice, but I would recommend people go back and watch it. It's particularly like I don't think a lot of people nowadays would have even be familiar with 90% of the content in it. There's certain ones that show up every so often. The hello, I'd like to apply to be a homosexual.
Yes.
And stuff like that, like, or the one where Hugh Laurie's the police Bobby. And he's like, you want to see what's under my hat? I shouldn't show you, but all right then. And he lifts the hat off and he puts his hand up. He's like, shit, someone's nicked it. Like little, like the fact that they can get like great comedy into little 4 and 5 second bursts, like that was fantastic.
Yeah.
But they have such bigger ones.
I think
not massive sketches like that people don't know about.
Not the 9 o'clock news and stuff like that did then owe a lot to them of like the quick cutaway to a very silly thing and then quick cut back. They did.
I think they perfected the art of the stupid vignette because they didn't have a Terry Gilliam to do the art. Yeah, they didn't have their own unique art style, so what they did was the vox pops when it was characters in the street, half the time it was one of them in drag and acting like an old lady or something like that.
Was it over? Is it their detectives walk in? And he goes, "Mind if we have a look around?" And she goes, "Go right ahead." And he's like,
Yeah, and that's the one where they're roaring at the kid. Yeah, there was and even had recurring characters. Not a lot of people realize that there was recurring characters episode to episode. There was the one where they were playing the two car dealership salesmen.
Yes.
And everything was damn, and they were just fucking bizarre characters a lot of the times. But it was just, I think their comedic presence, and they work so well together, the pair of them. That it's just, and I think Hugh Laurie, just before I finish, Hugh Laurie, for a lot of people our age or slightly younger, the only thing they really know him as is House.
Yeah.
And House is obviously he's the sharp wit, and he's the massively intelligent person.
Yep.
In 99% of the Fry and Laurie stuff, he's playing a complete fucking idiot.
Yes, and in Blackadder as well, it's the best.
Well.
It's so good.
So, he's also on the first episode of QI. I don't know if you remember that. He was on the first episode of QI to help out his friend.
I love that scene in House when he's making phone calls and he puts on a fake British accent to make a phone call, and it's nearly his Prince voice from Blackadder. Like, "Oh, hello," and he goes far too British with it.
Yeah.
And
what's the name
so
does
good.
it as well? Your man who plays McNulty in The Wire is English,
right?
And there's an episode in The Wire where he has to pretend to be English. And he does the accent so bad, just on purpose. I think it's a tradition at this point.
Yeah.
It's like if you can pull off the American accent and you're English on TV in America, and they make you do an English accent, you fuck it up on purpose. So.
There's the guys who've come up through the footlights, and I think this is a story that either Fry or Laurie told. Is something that they do is on one of the comedy nights, they have like Kill Your Darlings night. Where basically, if there's a sketch you've been writing for ages and you just can't end it, or you don't know if it's funny enough, or you don't know if it's good, you bring it up on stage. You bring up all your notebooks with all your scraps and stuff like that, and you start telling the joke, or you start doing the sketch until the moment it stops getting a laugh. So like it starts off and it's a funny thing, and there's a dustbin on fire in the middle of the stage, and the moment it's done, as like you start off with, it's got a good premise, it's got a strong start, but it starts trailing. You take that page and you fuck it in the fire and you move on, and it's a way of basically going, "This'll never be something. I've been hanging on to this for the longest time."
Yeah. So obviously, if it stops being funny before you reach the end of the bit,
and of course, then that becomes the punchline. If somebody looks at the audience and like halfway through a sentence glances up, looks out, and fucks in the thing, that of course is funny because like he knew it. He knew he was done there.
Yeah.
But I really respect that. I like that.
But that's the thing. It is something, and the comedy in it holds up quite well as well. It's like I said. It's just I think a lot of people our age or younger, which would fall into a lot of our listeners, just wouldn't be familiar with it, because most people will identify Stephen Fry is writer and QI.
Yeah.
First 13 seasons of QI, and obviously actor in the likes of V for Vendetta, and he was in Bones and stuff like that. People identify Hugh Laurie as being House.
Yeah.
Or that new one that he's playing where he's essentially House, but not House, but is House. And it's...
Holmes, yes, they just do a full circle.
I can't even remember the name of it, but it's one of those, like, his name is a noun.
Okay.
And he is a brilliant person in his field, but kind of pushes people away. And he has some sort of, like, disability. I think he's a psychoanalyst or something.
Okay.
Like this one. But he's literally doing House again.
I'll have to watch...
Because I think he's just getting all the money ever.
I'll have to watch Charlie Brooker's A Touch of Cloth again in the middle as a sorbet, where they just rip the piss out of that troubled detective or troubled expert who needs to do something. That is one of the funniest shows I've ever seen. If people haven't seen it,
Go on. That's it there. So he did a thing. I think it's no, it looks like it's cancelled now, unless it's been renewed, and it's called Chance.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, it was cancelled after 2 seasons. It focuses on a forensic neuropsychiatrist, Dr. Eldon Chance, who is semi-willingly pulled into his patient Jacqueline Blackstone's dangerous life of police corruption, manipulation, and abuse. So yeah, it's essentially just fucking House all over again. Like,
fair enough.
But it didn't make it past season 2. 20 episodes, that was it. So, but yeah, so it's just like I said, it was very indie at the time. That's another thing. Just if you do go back and watch it, bear in mind this was something that was like nobody was doing anything like it on TV, and I was surprised that they got it made. Looking back at it and knowing the history of it and stuff, they talk about it. There was a documentary made, I think, about 3 years ago, where both of them were talking about their careers together.
Yes, they're reunited. Fry and Laurie reunited.
Yeah, but they were talking about like how it just wasn't a thing.
Yeah,
so
it's a really good one. Cool.
I think that's it. I don't have any other ones. There's nothing else that kind of jumps out, because like we said before with TV, it's very hard to find stuff that would be considered indie. And I have to say, fair play to the BBC. Like the BBC for a while did a lot of kind of not pioneering, but they were giving a lot of the TV series their chance, because they subsist on the TV licenses. That's why there's no adverts on BBC. Any of the adverts are for their own shows. So they basically subsist on that. So because of that, they're not like beholden to advertisers. They can put on stuff, and if people don't like it, they go, cool, we'll cancel it after a season. Or it's a limited run. It's an event TV thing. It's 2 parts or it's 6 parts and it's done.
The anger.
Channel 4 did take up the mantle for a while, but they've seemed to have slacked off in the last 10 years or so.
I was going to say the anger over some of Stewart Lee stuff, where people realise that they're paying for him to go on screen and do that shit, is the funniest thing in the world. They're like, seriously, this is what my fucking money's going to. I was like, they really hate him.
Yeah. Good.
That's all for me. I'm going to show something off. You can't see me at the moment, but I'm going to...
No.
I'm holding up... I got...
No, of course I can see you. Don't break the illusion.
Don't break the illusion. We're sitting beside each other. I'm holding up the vinyl for the Silent Hill soundtrack. So it's from Mondo. You suggested Mondo to me for the Twin Peaks soundtrack, which I got. Now I got Silent Hill. So my last one, and they don't have it anymore in print, so if anybody ever sees it, this is me doing a shout out. If anyone sees the Suspiria OST on vinyl by Goblin, link it to me, because I will absolutely pick that up. That's my trilogy: Twin Peaks, Silent Hill, and Suspiria.
That's something actually is worth saying to people, just to let them know about that site. So Mondo Mondo Tees is the site, and they started off as a t-shirt site doing pop culture stuff. They've since exploded. They have their own convention every year in America, but it's one of these things that even a lot of my friends who are diehard film fans didn't know about until someone else was like, "You've seen this, right?" So they do stuff like they do limited print runs of posters, of vinyl, of t-shirts, mugs, all that type of stuff, and it's all related to classic films. And I mean classics, we're talking like Star Wars, Jaws, all that type of stuff. But then they also do more kind of just kind of cult stuff, Dread 3D, that type of thing. And what they do is they'll do like they'll go to artists who have never worked on a franchise and go, "Do you want to do some art for that?" For a film that's like 30 years ago, they go up to a guy who's never worked, who's only broken out in the last 5 or 6 years, has a very nice art style, and they go, "Do you want to do a Star Wars poster?" And they're like, "Oh, for Last Jedi." And they're like, No, the original trilogy. And that person will go do it, and they're allowed to be as interpretive, suggestive, whatever is there.
So like,
and they usually do several variants of them. So like, so one of my favorite artists, Jock, he does a lot of stuff for them. So Jock is people right now are going, no idea who Jock is. You have seen some of his work, you just don't realize it. He was the concept. So he's a comic book artist. He did the cover recently, actually in the last month. He did the cover of Superman issue 1000. So he's a big deal in comics to get a cover like that. He has done tons of Judge Dredd. He's done Batman, like lots of very cool stuff. He's also done. He's a concept artist for cinema. So he did all the concept art for Annihilation. He's worked very closely with Alex Garner in the past. So he did the concept art for Annihilation, for Ex Machina, for God, what else he's done? He's done it for Dread 3D. He's done other stuff, and he has a very you get to know his style very quickly. Beautiful art. But what they'll do is the way they release their stuff is very weird for posters. Now for vinyl, you can usually just go, it'll be on sale this day, you go and buy it.
Yeah, and
but
just
a lot of their stuff.
Just to go on from what you're saying, I'm so impressed with this, because all of their stuff, they'll have the Terminator 2 soundtrack, they'll have the Jaws soundtrack, they'll have all these different soundtracks, they do limited runs, and then completely original artwork like that. The artwork on this guy, can I do that without him being is a completely original thing by a guy called Sam Wolfe Connolly. I'm so impressed that they're able to basically take the existing stuff and then apply a new, give it to a new artist to work with. It seems like such a cool idea.
They're very good at picking an artist who, when they come out with the poster, they're like, holy shit, I never even thought of that, and it looks beautiful. But what they do is, so like a lot of jock stuff is they'll go, this will be on sale on the 16th of May, but they don't tell you what time. And like you have to follow them on Twitter, and then on the 16th of May at some point, the artist and Mondo Tees will go, okay, they're going on sale in 5 minutes, or it's now on sale. That's all. They don't give you any more warning than that. And it's not, so it's to try and reduce the amount of like bots buying stuff where like, oh well, if it goes on sale at 9 o'clock, I'll just set my thing up and it'll pick it up at 9 o'clock. This thing, like, it could go on sale at any point during the day, and usually what they'll have is they'll have like the normal version of the poster, and there'll be like 200 of them. 200 is usually the number, and then they have a second one which is the same poster but done in a recolor or slightly or a different format, and that one's usually about 50. For example, there was a my friend Aaron, who I mentioned earlier, so for his as a wedding present for him, his favorite films of all time are Star Wars films, Jaws and Star Wars. Depends on the day of the week, but it's between those two. And I got him one called Into the Garbage Chute Flyboy. And this is the other thing that they do, is that when they're doing the art, they don't pick the iconic stuff. They pick scenes, and they do their own interpretation of the scene. So it's the bit with them on the trash compactor in Star Wars, and they're in the stormtrooper uniforms and stuff with the helmets off. And there was so I got it from him, and it was in portrait form, and that was the 200 one. But the weekend of his wedding was San Diego Comic-Con, and only at San Diego Comic-Con there was a landscape version in a different color, and that one was even less. And Mike, who was on this episode before, was at San Diego Comic-Con and was trying to get a copy of it, but it was sold out. So they're super limited edition. They're beautiful pieces of work. Like I said, I'm just referencing Jock because I mean, like, I have some of his work from Mondo, but there's plenty of other phenomenal artists on there.
And it's so funny because obviously when a poster comes out for a movie, it's to sell a movie, it's to bring you to see a movie you haven't seen yet. And it's even old 70s 80s kind of stuff, the poster oftentimes wasn't indicative, like the iconic scene of Luke Skywalker holding the lightsaber up and all the beams of light and everything like coming out of it. That's not in the movie. Like, Leia never is hanging off his leg. So it's beautiful posters with like all of the nostalgia and all of the kind of looking back in the past to find out what were the real iconic moments. So when you say the trash compactor moment, like, that is a real iconic moment that no one would ever think to sell on a poster, and it's really beautiful.
I think that the best way I can describe it is when a film poster is released ahead of a film, the normal film poster comes out, it is to promote the film and to entice people to see it. The Mondo posters celebrate the films.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it.
They assume you've already seen it. They assume you know what the film is. They assume you know what the visuals are for this film, and they're putting their own thing of, wasn't that moment beautiful? Wasn't that moment great? Wasn't that moment pivotal? And they have it in their own. And they get an artist to do it, and fantastic stuff like. Mondo Tees, definitely worth checking out if you're a film buff. They do game stuff occasionally, they do TV stuff occasionally, but it's mostly films.
And we're not sponsored by them, but after this I am completely going to see if they will send me something for free. Hi Mondo.
Hi Mondo. I got a Dread 3D, so if you look up the Jock Dread 3D Mondo picture, we'll probably stick it in the frame somewhere. Yeah. So I got that one, gorgeous. I got it signed by him. His signature's already on it, but I got him to sign it, and they're like, it's sitting in a tube in Dublin waiting to be shipped over. With the next batch of my stuff that comes over, and I'll have to get it framed and put it on the wall beside my Simon Stalenhag poster. But it's like the stuff they do, and they do like a daily newsletter where they're going like, so this is the stuff that's coming up, and it's not always just stuff that's going to be available the next week. Some of it's like, so we have this idea and it's coming out in 6 months' time. It's just to put it on your radar and be like, check this out. Yeah. So if you are looking, if you're
listening to us, you're probably into it. Yeah.
And to be honest, if you're listening to us, you're probably never going to be able to afford a house, because particularly if you're living in Dublin,
we make bad choices. Yay!
Well, but you're never going to be able to afford a house in Dublin because it just costs too fucking much. So you're going to just be renting. Owning furniture is a hassle to transport it from one apartment to the next as you move around. But a poster is really easy to transport. So let that be your furniture.
T-shirts,
customize
you can just wear them
that way.
Yeah. Cool.
So that's it.
Yep.
I think.
Cheers all.
Cool. Thanks very much for tuning in. We'll catch us next time.
Have fun.